very good evening to you, and thank you so much for staying tuned to Y254 TV. I hope you've had a lovely day today, and you are watching the Power Talk Show. As usual, I am your host, Cheryl Blessing, and we're having a very, very interesting conversation tonight, and we're doing it in honor of the Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. June is the month where we really need to talk about men's mental health. We need to advocate for it, and we're having a conversation tonight on the Power Talk Show about that. We're talking about men, your image, and your mental health. How do you find out who to be rather? How do you find out who is a man? How do you establish yourself? How do you find your identity, your image? Who do you root that in? We want to establish all of that, and I want to get it from the guys because I am no expert, but I want to hear from the gentlemen who they are going to talk about all of this and much more through their own experience, through different people's experiences, through their own understanding, and they're going to help us establish how we can form our image and identity as men. I'm joined here by, I have two Joels actually on set. I'll introduce Joel Shikabi, who I've been with first. You are a podcaster. Yes, Joel, karibu tena. It's so nice to be with you.
My pleasure.
It's such a pleasure. Yeah. And next to Joel, we have Joel Karaoke, who is a thought-provoking speaker. I love that. I think that was the one thing I had to pick from your title. And Joel, karibu.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you on the Power Talk Show.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
The topic, let's go.
It's very, very fascinating. Yeah. And the thing that I like about both of you being here is you all have very strong identities, very strong masculine identities, and you're going to help us to maybe establish what is the best way for men to find their identity. And I want to get into this conversation with you back at home, and you can do that by going to our platforms at Y254 across all social platforms, and let me know what you think about this conversation. I've asked you a question, and I wonder, how do you form your identity as a man? Where do you root the basis of this is me as a man, this is my identity? Why do men feel the need to maintain a strong image even when they're struggling? Why do we feel like men shouldn't cry? Why do you feel like men shouldn't be emotionally vulnerable? That is what I want to get into tonight on the Power Talk Show. So go on our platforms and tell us, why do men feel the need to present a strong image even when they're struggling? And the thing I love about this conversation is I think it comes at the best time, because in Kenya, the men have been, I think for the past few years, the men have been feeling neglected, and the men have been sidelined kidogo, because we've prioritized our girl child, our women. There is empowerment of women everywhere. But when we start this conversation, I want us first to establish who is a man, because I think we just throw this word around, you know, you're supposed to be a man and a woman, but who is a man? Joel, let me start with you.
Okay, I'd say allow me to use my background and where I'm coming from the spiritual circles. So for me, man is a spirit who has a body. Man is a spirit who has a soul living in a body. And you know, when we say man, it can be both the female and the male, right? Yeah. So today, I believe this conversation is all about the male man, right? And so to me, a man who identifies as a man is someone who has come to the point of maturity, because, you know, we start as children, then we become sons, then we become men, you see, boys to men. Yeah. So a man is someone who's mature, who is self-aware, who's in touch with the three aspects of the spirit, soul, and body that he has.
I love that. Yeah. And I love that you've said we're talking about the male man, because, you know, even in the Bible, when God is referring to humans, he'll talk about man. Yeah, he'll say, let us make man in our image and likeness. Yeah. So it's very easy for us to just get lost and just say, you know, a man is, we expect people to know what a man is, but then you really have to define. And I like that you've also said there has to be a transition from you being a boy to you being a man. What about you, Joel? I was also, before we were having the conversation, because we have two Joels, I hope you as the audience, you will be able to follow it. But Joel, please add to what Chikabi has said. Who do you define as a man?
I concur with what he says, but I'll add to the fact that a man is somebody who is self-aware of what he is, who he is, and what he's capable of.
Yeah.
That is what defines a man, as he says, from a boy transition into this figure that we have that is biologically a male. Do you identify yourself and know that I am this, I'm capable of this, and these are the responsibilities, and you take ownership of them? That defines a male man.
I love that. You have to know who you are, what you're capable of, and that, I think, in some ways, that speaks of the identity. You have to find your identity. But then, let's talk about the transition, because we clearly have to have a transition period. And then in the African society, we'll talk about circumcision, there's initiation, and different practices, different faiths, different cultures, they have different ways of transitioning. But now we're in the modern times. I don't think I've seen boys going to the forest to be with grandfathers. You know, for a while, you go to the hospital, you go through circumcision, and that's it. So how do we go through this transition? Who facilitates this transition? Joel Chikabi.
I think the best way to look at it is, let's use the Bible as the mirror. And we are not doing this as a religious practice. The Bible is not just a storybook. If you are keen to study, you'll understand that it has so many truths in it that can help transform and inform you to the point of fully becoming aware of who you are as a man. When we look at our traditions, they say that a man becomes a man when he's circumcised. But when you look at the Bible, Jesus was circumcised at eight days, right? And then the Bible says, and the child grew. You see? So he was still a child. So to me, I'd say a man is not a man after circumcision, but after he has gone through training, training from a child to a son, to ownership, to taking responsibility, to being accountable, And because I believe if you have a child of 13 years old who's just circumcised, you won't give them the keys to your Range Rover and say, you are a man. Or you won't give him a house and tell him to get married. He has to go through a process of training, through a rigorous process of, showing him the ropes, of life, and then you'll also at some point leave him to experience life for himself. Let him go into the world, experience it out there for him to grow.
And I love what you've said, because if we base it on circumcision, then the Jews, because they're circumcised at 8, then a 5-month-old baby is a man. But then there has to be training. And rigorous training. But then when we come to our context let me just base it on Kenya. When we look at Kenya, in the past, that training was there. It was facilitated we had grandfathers. They were the ones who would take us through, a man should be like this. You'd follow and see. I like the Indian culture, because with the Indians, you see them taking their kids to the shops with them. And if it's a businessman, they will train their boy from an early age, and that can make them a man. But then, most African cultures have been eroded. Na sasa imebaki tu wanaenda shule, unaenda high school unafunzwa. So is this training happening in high school? Because I've had some stories about boys' high schools. Joel Karaoke, what happens? Like, who facilitates this training? Because I'm trying to picture, especially when a boy is a teenager. We don't have a school of training men. We don't have a school of teaching boys to be men. There's no school that trains you like that. So it's expected to come from home. But also when you go back home, sometimes your father comes in and amechoka, anataka tu sapa, I watch football, your story ishe. So who trains you?
Now, based on what he has said, I'll add to something. A man becomes a man in 3 aspects only in this society that we live in right now. One, when he realizes, if I don't do something to get myself out of this situation, something is going to mess up my entire life. Either I do something positive or I mess myself with a drug or something. That is the time most guys, especially when they're around 18 to around 30, they start figuring out, now, I'm in this mess, what do I do? Most boys become men at that point. The next part is when they transition to marriage. Especially that first trimester of a woman, the stress that she goes through, most guys change at that period because they see They think they used to, they would have control over their emotions, but they didn't, until they see that and they are like, okay, if I don't do something about the way I act, the way I react, every time she does something, there's a way I react. If I don't do something about this, I'm going to mess up this relationship, and this child that is coming will not be a father. In that same instance, the boy remembers growing up the father he wished he had at that point. Most guys, they start looking at themselves and seeing, I'm becoming like my father. I'm acting like my father. I talk like my father. I react like my father. I need to do something about this. If not, I'm going to become a version of the same dad I grew up with. The next point is when they lose everything. Most guys, this one has nothing to do with age, because a man does not become a man because he has reached a certain age. He becomes a man through this. Once you lose a thing, let's say you build a business and you've gotten it to a certain level, and because of circumstances, things happen and you lose, and you didn't see it coming. And if you did, you lose friends, you lose family, you lose technically everything that you've built. Most people at that point, they either crash or evaporate at that point. The people who rise from that, they don't rise out of emotion. They rise from, I need to build this again. Why? If I don't do this, who is going to do it for me? Two, if I don't do this and I have a family, because maybe you've built that business up to a certain point and you have family now, if I don't do this, my family is done. Then you remember as point number two, if I don't do this again, I'll become the same father I grew up with, and I do not want that. These three instances might either change or destroy you in the right way to make you a man now.
That's true. And I feel like now, let's focus on the first point, because I think with point 2 and 3, you need, okay, maybe 1 and 2, 1 and 3, because with point 2, you need to be in a marriage. But the first point you said is a situation will change you. Either you get into trouble or something happens, then you're forced to change. You realize, oh, now I need to either do this or just follow this path. And then the last one, when you lose everything. When I think about it, one thing you said that I love is age does not make you a man. Because I think I've encountered 40-year-old boys and I've encountered 17-year-old men. Age does not make you a man, and I think it has to come from within. It has to come from you, the things that you consume, the people that you associate with, and the experiences that you have. They either shape you or they break you. Now when I think about this instance, let me focus on the first one, because we have so many people who've just, maybe you finished high school, you're in campus, you're trying to figure out life. And right now, the times we're in, I kind of believe there's an economic depression that is going on. But then beyond Kenya, the world seems to be on the brink of a war. Like, kila kitu na katuni kama, kunenda kwa na vita next week, who knows? And society has set certain expectations for men. When you go online, you always hear men should be like this, men are supposed to be warriors, men don't cry, men don't... I'm thinking about this young boy who's just finished school, probably can't talk to the dad. Because, you know, sometimes with our African dads, you can't tell them too much. Unajua, niendo kuja kuambie, ama, like, I don't know, miraculously, you'll talk about it. Because the relationship with fathers and sons, most of it is unspoken. You know, there is unspoken communication, non-verbal communication do inagoingi on, alafu unajua, oh, dad expects this of me. So how then do we separate the people with the right mindset versus the people with the wrong mindset? Because you have so many people out there giving perceptions, opinions, saying what they think. I don't know if you've watched these videos of people buffed up, you know, men doing the morning routine, dunking their face in ice and running, you know, and then guys think that's what it takes to be a man. Joel Chikabi, what would you say to that? How do we filter and say this is the right way, this is the wrong way? How do you find the right voice?
It narrows down to awareness. Awareness creates your identity. So we need to be more aware of the truth rather than hearsay. Because, you know, we've been hearing men are supposed to do this, men are supposed to do that, men are expected not to do this or do that. But as an individual, this is an individual walk. Life is not communal. All of us have our specific designed paths in life. So number one, you need to come to a point of awareness. And how do you get awareness? You get it through what you see, what you hear, things you read, and those inform your belief system. Those make up what you constantly think about. And your belief system is now the ground on which you either crumble or you stand when you're faced, or whenever you're faced with an issue of life. Because situations happen everywhere. It's not just in Kenya. As you said, it's global. There's the economic pressure, there's the expectations from family and from parents and from the society at large. But what defines a man is his ability to stand in the face of oppression or in the face of a challenge without crumbling, because he's strong. As we were starting the interview, I mentioned that man is a spirit who has a soul and he lives in a body. And when you hear about Mental Health Month, anytime people hear about mental health, they confuse it for mental illness. But actually, mental health is the well-being of someone. So, as I said, man is a spirit who has a soul and lives in a body. So our soul is like the filter between our spirit and our body. So in our soul, we have three aspects. We have the mind, we have the will, and we have the emotion, right? So when we talk about our emotions, how do we handle our emotions? So right there, if you constantly open your gates, now your eyes and your ears, to negative situations, to negative news, to negative or hearsays that you've been hearing, a man should have 20 girlfriends, a man should do this or that. So that will inform your belief system. And then that will be preparing you for a fall. Because remember, you are not your emotions. You are not what you hear people saying. You are the spirit. So the best way to tackle this is to ensure that your spirit man is so strong. Because now when we say mental illness, we mean there is a disorder. It's like in Parliament when you hear a legislature saying this MP is out of order, So it means like there's something that needs to be done to bring your mind back to order, right? And bringing your mind back to order, you require a spirit to be strong, to be developed to the point that you are not responding to every emotion. You are not, because men are supposed to feel emotions. Men are also human, but how do we respond? How do we respond, or do we react to our emotions, right? So personally, I experience my emotions, but I've trained myself to manage my emotions. To be above my soul, my spirit. I'm my spirit, so I'm in charge of my soul. I'm in charge of my body. So it is something that comes through training. It's unfortunate that in our families nobody taught us this. It's something that you have to find it for yourself. I thank God because I was privileged enough. Okay, my dad passed on when I was still young, and I had to discover a lot of things by myself. But it was a good training ground, because now I know I'm going to be a better father, I'm going to be a better mentor, and stuff like that. So you have to really work on close the gates of your soul. Learn to sort of keep what gets into you and what you believe. Because if they say, oh, men are dying every day because of suicide, if that becomes your awareness, then it will become it will overshadow your thoughts, and then that will become your reality. But you can say, some men know themselves, some men will not crumble, some men, I choose to be different. Despite of what's happening, my case is different. I'm not my emotions, I'm not men are this, men are that. I'm Joel Chikapi, I have a new identity.
I love that, because even the church does not teach us exactly what you're talking about. Most churches will teach us about salvation and Jesus and, condemnation if you're not saved. And that's about it, or prosperity. We never go deeper to understand. And I love what you've said, because there is the spirit who is our true identity, and then the soul, which translates the human experience to the spirit, and the spirit to the human. But then the minute you take on everything that the world, because if you go online, there's always someone who's going to be dying.
Yes.
There's always going to be suffering, because that is the way the world is. But if you also do as such, there are people who are happy, people are being born, people are getting healing, you know, people have been married for 30 years and they're celebrating anniversaries. So it's about the kind of things we consume. So the first thing, we have to find our identity in Christ Jesus, I think, because if we read the Bible, if you have an understanding of the spirit, of the religious aspect, then it helps process or translate a lot of these other physical things that we experience. But then beyond that, we are seeing so many personalities who we've idolized. And let's be realistic, we cannot stop all listening to music today. We can't all stop watching movies. We can't all stop following certain celebrities. So there are people who we look at and we think, he is a man. I want to be a man like him. I like what he does. But then we fail to understand what goes on behind the scenes, and perception. Perception is something that's so fascinating, because I was watching a documentary about Napoleon, the French conqueror, this weekend. And the thing that he was insisting upon was perception. Perception is everything. And what we see online, sometimes it's just the perception. But then we don't understand behind the scenes, kuna mtu amepanga content. Amesema leo mimi nenda kushoot Kilimani, nimesha bookie place, you know, and they know exactly what kind of content they're going to put out. So let's talk about that, Joel Karaoke, because we have so many guys, especially in this day and age. We're not asking our parents, we're not asking our religious leaders, we're not going to ask our shosho or our grandfathers how do we go through it. We're going online. We're going to Instagram, we're going to Facebook, we're going to X, we're going to ChatGPT. Kuuliza, what should I do? You know. So how then do we pick and choose who to watch, who to listen to? How do we judge people?
There are three things in this question that we might need to go deeper into. One, when you look at social media, people live vicariously through seeing that person. There's somebody who watches you every time, and they look at you and they want to embody themselves to live like you. So when a version of a male figure comes and he's purporting to be this masculine guy who goes out, hangs around this type of women, drives these types of cars, if they like that, there's a following that is going to follow that and think this is what a man is supposed to be. On the same, another one will go sit somewhere in a farm, old guy smoking something, and just chill there and just talk quietly, calmly. Very many men are going to look at that and start living vicariously through that. So in society, we will have two versions that are very dangerous in the form of what they have picked by what they see online. Two, men should be like water. Water can decide based on where it's put to be calm. If you put water in a glass, like what we've put here, it's calm, it's chilled, it's just there. But if you take the same water and create a flood, it can do as much harm as we have seen hurricanes do, tornadoes do, as much of it. On the flip side, the same water will quench your thirst.
That is true.
This man is supposed to have, as he's saying, is supposed to understand self as water. That I'm powerful enough and capable enough to be dangerous, but I choose not to. I'm powerful enough to understand that I can love or be evil, but I choose love. I'm powerful enough to know if I walk into a place, there's an energy that I carry. So when I walk into this place, what are people thinking? Am I the person that they think that is embodying what I believe in? And do I leave a good energy there or a negative one? You're supposed to be that water that knows this is whom I am, and I can be another version in an instant. This is not to say that now you're not capable of being that dangerous when you need to be. You need to be that dangerous when you have to. Why? The same version of a man has to understand that he has to protect. And protection does not always come in physical interaction. Because if I ask him the last time he had an actual fight, a real physical fight, most likely it was a long time ago. But not to say that now, if something happened and you need to protect your family, he can't do it. You're supposed to know that you can. So you're supposed to take your time every day to either learn how to or practice every day to learn how to protect this. One, yourself and them. The last version of a man is a man who is spiritual. Like the way he's speaking about the man in the spiritual form. The one side I fail to get when it comes to this side is most people don't understand what they mean by the spiritual man. The spiritual man is somebody who understands who God is first. We're told this is a temple of God. But we don't understand what do I actually mean when I say that. Then we go outside to look for God. We pray, but we go out there to look for somebody to pray. We forget that we have to pray. By understanding that, the laws of nature, some of the laws of nature, they call the hermetic principles of the universe. One of the laws says, as within, so without.
Yeah.
As a man thinketh, so is he. In that, magicians say abracadabra, it's the same meaning. In that, whatever it is you believe that I am this type of man, by nature, as you speak it, you start becoming it. So as you were saying, when you start telling yourself, I'm weak, I'm this type of person, I'm this type of, you start becoming it without knowing.
Yeah.
We do it over a period of time. Changing that now becomes very difficult.
It does.
Yes.
Because your identity, it comes from within.
Yes.
So once you accept men are fighters, we're warriors, then that becomes your identity.
Yeah.
But I like what you're saying, because you can, depending on the situation, you can change. You need to flow. You need to learn and observe and see. So I'm in a board meeting. I'm called to be intellectual.
Yeah.
I'm not called to be violent, or I'm at war. So I need to actually be in, fighting mode. I really, really love that. And I want us to get deeper into that. Now, in terms of men, in relations to the other facets of life, in terms of us at work, us in relationships, us with friends. But before we get there, I want us to go back to the question of the day. I want to know, why do men feel the need to maintain a strong image even when they're struggling? Why is there a need for men to act like, I'm strong, I'm put together, everything is okay, even when everything isn't? Go on our platforms at Y254 and let us know. I'll sample your comments before the show ends. But for now, I want us to take a very, very short break. Stay tuned, because when we come back, we're going to establish how men should react in different contexts and how we can become better in society. So stay tuned for that.